They say most corporate events are painfully boring, but no one ever mentions how many shadows you can hide in if you don't belong there. I wasn't invited to the gala. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the 14th floor of the Lexford Plaza Hotel that night. But I knew if I asked her what really went on during these executive nights, she'd lie again, with that same little head tilt she gives when she thinks I'm being dramatic. So I didn't ask. I dressed in my cousin's blazer, clipped a stolen lanyard to my belt, and told the elevator operator I was with internal strategy. Whatever that means. I didn't sneak in to make a scene. I didn't even think I'd stay long. I just wanted to see her in that environment. Maybe prove to myself that everything was normal. Spoiler, it wasn't. From the moment I stepped into the ballroom, it was like watching a different version of my wife, one I'd never met. Her laugh was louder. Her body language, looser. She floated from group to group like she was hosting the whole damn event. And then there was the corner. The far left corner near the curtained patio, where the lights were turned down just enough to make everything a little blurrier. That's where she kept going back. Not once. Not twice. 4 times. The 4th time, I followed, staying just close enough to see without being seen. That's when I saw her pass a folded napkin to someone. Not a drink. Not a polite handshake. A napkin. Folded like a secret. Like something that needed hiding. And the man she handed it to? He kissed her wrist. Not her hand. Her wrist. That's when my stomach turned to ice. Because I've been married to her for nearly 7 years, and she's never let me do that. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there in the soft buzz of the ballroom, hidden behind a marble column, watching a man I didn't recognize, wearing the same corporate lapel pin as my wife, tuck that folded napkin into the inside pocket of his suit like it was a damn map to buried treasure. My brain didn't know how to process what I had just seen. Was it flirtation? A game? A joke between colleagues? Or was this something deeper, something rehearsed? Rachel turned and walked away, her dress shimmering under the chandeliers as if nothing happened. She paused by the bar, placed an order, and laughed at something the bartender said, as if her wrist hadn't just been kissed in a dark corner like this was some 1950s noir drama. The man didn't follow her. He stayed where he was, cool, calm, like he knew she'd be back. And that was when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-time flirtation. This was a pattern. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I drifted toward the bar, careful not to get too close, trying to catch the bartender's voice over the ambient music. But I only caught fragments. Same guy as last time? Rachel laughed again. Of course not. That'd be too obvious. Too obvious. Those 2 words thudded in my skull like bricks. I had walked into this place thinking I might see a suspicious glance, maybe a little over-friendly conversation. What I found was a woman operating like she was on her 5th secret mission. She had done this before. I backed off fast, nearly knocking into a waiter holding a tray of mini quiches. I muttered an apology and retreated toward the far wall where the event's marketing banner hung. From that angle, I could see both the man and Rachel, like 2 magnets pretending not to pull toward each other. He finally moved toward the elevators. Rachel waited exactly 30 seconds before excusing herself from a group of coworkers and following. I felt my chest collapse. This was it. This was the moment I would either turn around, leave, and live the rest of my life haunted by possibilities, or follow them. So I did. And when those elevator doors slid open and I saw both of them inside, standing inches apart, neither saying a word, just smiling, like they'd rehearsed this. I stepped in too. No one said a word. Not even me. The elevator was silent, except for the soft hum of its old motor. I stood in the far right corner, pretending to scroll on a phone that had 3% battery and absolutely no plan. Rachel didn't even look at me. Not once. She kept her eyes fixed on the chrome doors, her face calm, unreadable. The man, tall, expensive-smelling, the kind of guy who gets his shoes polished by someone else, stood on the other side, hands in his pockets, his jaw tight, with some smug little grin he wasn't even trying to hide. I thought he'd say something. Maybe a joke. Maybe ask if I was going up to the penthouse, too. But he didn't. And somehow, that was worse. It was like I wasn't even there. Like I was just background noise in their secret world. The elevator stopped on the 16th floor. He stepped out first. Rachel followed. I stayed inside, watching the doors start to close, and then jammed my hand between them like an idiot, slipping out into the hallway behind them. They walked fast, not like people sneaking around. No. Like people who were so used to sneaking, they no longer needed to be careful. I trailed them from a distance, ducking behind an ice machine and a housekeeping cart like I was in some low-budget spy film. At one point, I pulled a room service menu off the wall just to pretend I had a reason to be standing there. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, muffled, eerily sterile. And then they stopped at room 1623. She knocked. He didn't use a key, which meant someone else was in there. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stood there, around the corner, heart thudding in my throat like a war drum. A moment later, the door opened from the inside. I couldn't see the face, just a silhouette and a hand waving them in quickly. The door closed behind them, and with it, so did the illusion that I was married to someone I actually knew. I wanted to scream, or kick something, or punch a wall and feel something that made sense. But instead, I leaned against the hallway and slowly slid down to the floor like some sitcom loser who just found out his prom date went with the quarterback. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been 50. But eventually, the door opened again, and not all three of them came out. Just Rachel. She looked different. Her hair was messier. Her lipstick had faded, and she was smiling like someone who had gotten away with something. She walked right past me without even noticing I was there. She didn't see me, but I saw everything. I didn't follow her this time. I couldn't. My legs had turned into sandbags, and my chest felt like it was caving in. I sat there on the carpeted floor, in that hallway of polished silence, trying to swallow the weight of what I'd just seen. I knew if I stood up, if I took one more step forward, I'd either break into 1,000 loud pieces or knock on that hotel room door and demand an answer I was nowhere near ready to hear. I don't know what I expected when she walked out. Maybe a face full of guilt, a glance over the shoulder, some sign that her soul still had a pulse. But no, Rachel didn't even hesitate. She strolled back down the hallway like she had just finished a conference call. Not whatever the hell that was behind that door. I sat there long after the sound of her heels disappeared into the elevator shaft. Eventually, I got up. My shirt was sticking to my back from the stress sweat. My mouth was dry, but my palms were soaked. And even though every part of me wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and pretend none of this happened, I didn't. I did something I still don't understand. I walked to the door. I stood in front of room 1623 and pressed my ear against the wood. At first, nothing. Just the low drone of the HVAC system. And then voices. Male voices. 2 of them. One was laughing. One said something about rotation and her being better this time. I staggered back like the door had just punched me. I didn't need to hear any more. I didn't even need to know who the third man was. The truth wasn't just written on the walls. It was shouting at me through them. I took the elevator down in silence. I walked through the marble lobby, past couples checking in and business types typing on laptops, and out into the cold air of the city night. I didn't feel human anymore. I felt like the ghost of some pathetic man who still wore his wedding ring because he hadn't figured out where to bury it yet. My car was parked 3 blocks away. I don't remember walking to it, but I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I remember looking at the passenger seat and imagining her sitting there, like she used to when we'd get drive-through milkshakes and argue about movies. And then I remember the smell. When she got home that night, later than she'd promised, she leaned over to kiss me hello like she always did. And that's when it hit me. She didn't smell like her usual perfume. She smelled like him. The next morning was surreal. She was in the kitchen, humming, making coffee. She wore the same white robe she always did, the one with the loose thread on the left sleeve. I stood in the hallway, just outside the kitchen entrance, staring at her like I was trying to solve a crime scene. Because I was. She greeted me with a good morning, like she hadn't just disappeared into a hotel room with 2 strangers the night before. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't kissed a man's wrist. Like she hadn't walked out of that room adjusting her hair. Like she hadn't smelled like an unfamiliar cologne and cheap hotel fabric softener. And for a split second, I answered back. I said, "Morning," like I was reading from a script I hadn't written. We ate breakfast, oatmeal in silence. She scrolled on her phone, and I watched her, wondering how many text threads were opened that didn't include me. I wondered if the guy from last night had messaged her already. Or worse, if he hadn't. If she was just another name in his long list of Thursday night distractions. I couldn't eat. My mind kept replaying the way she knocked on the hotel door. Not like someone who was nervous, but like someone who knew they'd be welcomed in. That's when I asked the question, It slipped out before I could stop it. What color was the ballroom floor last night? She blinked. What? The floor? I said casually, spoon in hand, heart pounding like a jackhammer. At your event. The hotel ballroom. Was it carpet or tile? She hesitated. Just for a second. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. Then she smiled. Beige carpet, I think. I wasn't really paying attention to the floor, Owen. Beige. That was wrong. It had been dark red with a gold pattern. I remembered because I stood on it for almost 10 minutes near the elevator, trying to talk myself out of following her. I remembered thinking it looked like something out of a casino, loud and outdated. I nodded and dropped it. Didn't say a word. But inside, something snapped into place. Not anger. Not yet. Just confirmation. That she'd lie, even when she didn't have to. That she'd lie about something so small, she didn't think it would ever matter. She kissed my cheek before heading to the bathroom. I didn't flinch, but I didn't lean in either. And once the door closed behind her, I pulled out my phone. I went into our cell plan's online portal. I'd never done that before. Never cared. But now I wanted everything. The texts, the call logs, the location pings. I wanted to see her world from the outside, the way she had built it without me. And what I found there was enough to keep me staring at the screen for over an hour, my oatmeal turning cold beside me. Because one of the numbers, one she had called 4 times the week before, had a name attached to it. A name I recognized from her work events. And worse, a name I hadn't heard her say out loud in over 5 months. Kellen. That was the name. I stared at it on the screen like it was radioactive. I remembered him only vaguely. He'd come up once, maybe twice, back when Rachel first joined her firm. A senior associate, 2 floors above her department. She'd mentioned him offhandedly in a story about someone spilling coffee during a pitch meeting. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I remember her tone. Almost detached, like she wanted to make sure I didn't latch onto the name. And then, like magic, she never brought him up again. Until now. 4 calls in 1 week. A few minutes long, each. Mostly after 11 p.m. Once during her lunch break, right before she texted me that she was eating at her desk and buried in emails. I felt a chill crawl up the back of my neck as I scrolled further through the records. There were no texts. Nothing visible, at least. But people like Rachel wouldn't be that sloppy. They used apps that didn't leave trails. She was smarter than I'd given her credit for, smarter than me, clearly. That day, I couldn't focus on anything else. I walked around the apartment like a malfunctioning robot, opening drawers, forgetting what I was looking for, rereading receipts like they might confess something. I even checked her coat pockets like some sad, suspicious sitcom husband. Found nothing. Except for a mint and a bobby pin that wasn't hers. She doesn't use bobby pins. She hates them, calls them scalp stabbers. But that wasn't proof. Not really. That afternoon, Rachel came home early. She brought takeout, acting like it was some grand surprise. She set the bags down with a big smile and said, "Figured we could do something easy tonight. I know you've been stressed." Stressed. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or flip the damn table. Instead, I said, "Thanks." We ate Thai food while she recapped a meeting with a new client, someone named Foster, or Folsom, I don't remember. I wasn't listening. I was watching. Every blink, every fork movement, every fake pause for breath. She looked so normal, so good at being normal. It was terrifying. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself and went into the bedroom. Not for long. Just long enough to do something I never thought I'd do. I placed a tiny voice recorder under the couch cushions. She never sits on the couch when she's alone. She takes calls there, paces in front of it, talks while folding laundry. I figured if anything was going to slip, it'd happen in that space. The stage she used when she thought the audience wasn't watching. The recorder was cheap, but discreet. It looked like a flash drive. 1 button. 48 hours of recording time. I felt sick doing it. But not as sick as I felt not knowing. That night, she went to bed early. Said she had a headache. She kissed me on the cheek, like she always does, and rolled over without another word. I lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling in the dark. And for the first time, I realized something deeply, horribly true. I didn't miss the version of her that used to love me. I missed the version of me that didn't know any better. It was a quiet Saturday when I listened to the recording. Rachel had gone to her Pilates class, which I now understood to be code for something that didn't involve exercise mats or reformers. As soon as I heard the apartment door click shut, I pulled the tiny recorder out from under the couch, my hands trembling like I was handling some kind of live wire. My heart thudded against my ribs so violently, I thought I might pass out before I even hit play. The file was over 2 hours long. At first, nothing. Just ambient room noise. A chair squeaking. Distant car horns. Then footsteps. Her voice. She was humming some random melody before making a phone call. The tone in her voice when she greeted the other person was all the confirmation I needed. "Hey you," she said. Soft. Sweet. A version of herself I hadn't heard in over a year. Then came the kicker. "No, he's in the other room." Folding his self-pity into a burrito of silence like usual. She was talking about me. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I didn't even know how to feel. Betrayed? Mocked. A little impressed by the metaphor? She went on. Talking, laughing. She told this Kellen guy that she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the performance. That being around me felt like living in a house haunted by the ghost of who we used to be. I felt like I'd been doused in cold water. Because here's the thing. It wasn't the cheating that gutted me the most. It wasn't the lies. It wasn't even the secret hotel meetups or the 11 p.m. calls. It was that, somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a person. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't even a problem to solve. I was just background. She joked that I still wore the slippers she bought me in 2019. Said they were symbolic. He asked, symbolic of what? She laughed. Of how he never knows when to walk away. That one hit harder than I expected. But it wasn't over. Later in the recording, there was another call. Not Kellen this time. Someone else. Male voice, deeper, more serious. She asked if the suite was still booked. She mentioned a Thursday. She said, and I quote, "If Kellen's gonna be weird about it again, I'll just say it's a client dinner. He won't question it. He never does." And she was right. I didn't. Not that Thursday. Or the one before it. Or the one before that. I sat there for another hour, staring at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this slow-burning emptiness take over, like someone had poked a hole in the center of me and all the air was leaking out. Then I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I opened my laptop and started writing an email. Not to Rachel. Not to Kellen. Not to the mystery man with the deep voice. But to myself. A letter I wasn't sure I'd ever send or finish. Because I didn't know what kind of man I was going to be after this. But I knew for damn sure I wasn't going to be him anymore. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table or throw her phone across the room like some viral breakup video. No, I just sat with the weight of the truth. Let it settle. Let it crack me open and remake me. Because something had shifted. It wasn't rage that took over. It was clarity. Over the next few days, I watched her carefully. Not like a detective gathering evidence, but like someone watching a stranger in his house. The way she texted under the table. The way she laughed at nothing while scrolling. The way her voice changed when she picked up the phone and walked into the other room. It was all so obvious now. Like a magic trick you can't unsee once you've learned how it's done. But instead of spiraling, I got organized. I met with a lawyer, quietly. I took screenshots, printed call logs, and recorded everything I needed. I opened a new checking account, transferred just enough to cover what was mine, and made arrangements with a friend in Baltimore to crash for a while. I packed my essentials slowly, carefully, box by box, over the course of a week. And then, on a clear Thursday morning, I made her breakfast. Pancakes. Her favorite. The ones I used to make when we first started dating. She looked surprised but pleased. She asked if it was a special occasion. I said yeah, kind of. When we sat down, I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a note, handwritten, with nothing more than, "I deserve better. I hope one day you do too." She opened it. Her smile faltered. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came. And I didn't wait for them. I stood up, kissed the top of her head like I was saying goodbye to an old friend, and walked out of the apartment. No yelling. No tears. No begging. Just freedom. It's been 6 months since that morning. I've been living in a small but cozy place by the harbor. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I joined a local trivia night team, made a few friends, and, slowly, piece by piece, started liking myself again. Not because someone else did, but because I finally stopped waiting to be seen by someone who had stopped looking. Rachel texted me once. Just one line. "Are you really gone?" I didn't respond. Because the truth is, no, I'm not gone. I'm finally here. Fully. Finally. And for the first time in years happy.